Hello, dear students. Today we will start with the topic of respiration in plants. Plants are one category of organisms very famous for the process photosynthesis, whereby they manufacture food in the form of glucose for all organisms on earth. But this glucose is also used for one important process, that is respiration. This glucose is broken down to release energy, which sustains the entire activities of any organism, whether it's plant or whether it's animal. So, how this respiration is brought about in animals, we will be studying that today. So, what is respiration? Respiration is a catabolic process of releasing energy from glucose for carrying out various life processes. Now, what is a catabolic process? A process which gives energy and is destructive, that is, a breaking down process. Respiration is an example of a catabolic process because it breaks down glucose to release carbon dioxide, water, and energy. The energy which is released in the form of ATP. An anabolic process basically consumes energy. It is constructive or it is biosynthetic. For example, photosynthesis. Photosynthesis produces the product called glucose, which is basically made from carbon dioxide and water using energy in the form of sunlight. So, photosynthesis is an example of an anabolic process, and respiration is a catabolic process. Now, what are the characteristics of respiration? Respiration is basically breakdown of glucose through a series of chemical steps by two major phases. The first phase is called as glycolysis. This part of respiration occurs in the cytoplasm and it breaks down glucose to pyruvate. Glucose is a 6 carbon compound and pyruvate is a 3 carbon compound. So, this first step of glycolysis breaks the 6 carbon glucose to a 3 carbon pyruvate. Now, once pyruvate is formed, then the next step takes place, that is called as the Krebs cycle. Krebs cycle occurs inside the mitochondria, which is the powerhouse of a cell, and it changes pyruvate to water, carbon dioxide, and ATP. These two steps, these two phases are the most important steps in respiration. Each of these steps is due to a particular enzyme. The steps produce energy in the form of heat and ATP. 1 mole of glucose produces 38 moles of ATP. That's a large amount of energy. And these two processes, the glycolysis and Krebs cycle, they take place in the cytoplasm and the mitochondria, respectively. The entire equation of respiration is represented when glucose combines with oxygen, it forms water, carbon dioxide, and energy in the form of heat and ATP. Now, ATP is called as the energy currency of a cell. What do we understand by this? The entire cellular activity requires energy, and cells use ATP as the immediate and available source of energy. They spend ATP. This ATP is stored in the mitochondria and used as and when needed. The ATP is called as adenosine triphosphate. Its full form, the full form of ATP is adenosine triphosphate. This is formed when inorganic phosphate combines with ADP, adenosine diphosphate, inside the mitochondria. Once this reaction has taken place, we have the energy rich molecule ATP, which will be used for carrying out all the cellular activities in a cell. Now, there are two processes which produce energy, but they are entirely different from each other. Respiration also produces energy. Burning or combustion also produces energy. They produce heat as well, but the two processes are quite different from each other. So let's see what are the differences. Respiration is a cellular process. It takes place inside the cells, whereas burning or combustion is a non-cellular process. Respiration occurs at body temperature, burning or combustion occurs at high temperature. Respiration occurs by a series of chemical steps, like two steps we have already done. They are glycolysis and Krebs cycle, whereas burning or combustion occurs in a single step. Respiration is carried out by enzymes. Burning or combustion is carried out by heat. Respiration is a biochemical process, whereas burning or combustion is a physiochemical process. In respiration, energy is produced as ATP and heat. In burning or combustion, energy is produced as heat, light, and sometimes even sound. In respiration, no light energy is produced, whereas in burning or combustion, light energy is produced. Respiration does not require any ignition temperature, a minimum temperature to start, whereas burning or combustion requires an ignition temperature, a minimum temperature to start. So we can understand how the two processes are very different from each other. Now you might wonder what part of a plant respires. Then actually every plant part respires, whether it's the leaves, the stem, the roots, the fruits, the flowers, the seeds, any plant part. There are basically three structures, three openings through which the oxygen enters in the plant. The oxygen can enter by lenticels, which are present on the stem. It can enter through stomata, which are present on the leaves in the epidermal region. It can enter through the general surface, as in case of roots, which are present inside the soil. So whether it is lenticels, stomata, or it is the general surface of the roots, entire plant part respires. Every inch of the plant respires. Now, based on this, if I ask you a simple question, in which of the flasks below will the lime water turn milky? So you have 6 conical flasks, each having a small test tube filled with lime water hanging inside, and all of them are stoppered. In the first flask A, there are certain flowers placed inside. In the flask B, there are fruits placed inside. In flask C, you have some leaves. In flask D, there are some pieces of stem. And in flask E, some roots have been placed. In flask F, no plant part has been placed. So all of them have lime water. According to you, in which of these will the lime water turn milky? Now, here the lime water turns milky in all flasks A, B, C, D, and E. All of them have a plant part. Each plant part respires. Only in flask F, which lacks any plant part, will there be no respiration, and hence the lime water will not turn milky. So every plant part respires. Now, it is not advisable to sleep under a tree at night, but it is considered good to sleep under a tree in the hot afternoon. Why is it so? When you sleep under a tree at night, the leaves are also respiring. They produce carbon dioxide, and amount of oxygen therefore is less. Also, there are many nocturnal animals like snakes, bats, many insects, even spiders. So there are birds which are sleeping on the tree. They may shed some droppings. It may lead to discomfort. These animals and insects may even sting you. So sleeping under a tree is not advisable, especially at night. On a hot midday, since the plant performs photosynthesis, it releases a large amount of oxygen. Also, transpiration causes cooling under a tree. So it is very advisable and beneficial to sleep under a tree on a hot afternoon. Now, we have the next point as to why plowing or tilling of the soil is useful. When you plow or till the soil, you create air spaces in the soil. These air spaces provide ample space for air and water to be provided to the roots when they are growing in the soil. So it loosens the soil, creating tiny air spaces around soil particles. And this is a good source of oxygen for the roots, allowing them to breathe. And if you water your plants too often, you remove these air spaces. Water, when it is provided extra to a plant, will ultimately come as standing water. It will suffocate the plants, especially by their roots, because the roots will be surrounded by moist soil at all times. So, if you consider these black particles here to represent soil particles and the blue structure to represent water, the suitable water is that which is present just around the soil particles. But when it fills these air spaces, that water becomes surplus. And when the air spaces are completely filled with water, there is no air for the roots to breathe. We say that the soil is saturated with water. This kind of water saturated soil is not needed for a plant to grow. The roots will be unable to breathe in such soil and the plants may die. So we should avoid overwatering our plants. Now we have aerobic and anaerobic respiration as the two types of respiration. So what is aerobic respiration? Aerobic respiration is the respiration which occurs in the presence of oxygen. So here oxygen reacts with glucose to produce water, carbon dioxide and 38 moles of ATPs. It's a large amount of heat energy produced by every molecule of glucose. In anaerobic respiration, on the other hand, there is no involvement of oxygen, and instead, ethanol, carbon dioxide, and only 2 moles of ATP are produced. So, anaerobic respiration produces an organic compound as one of the byproducts. There is no formation of uh, any water. Anaerobic respiration occurs in plants only for a short duration of time. Their preferable mode of respiration is the aerobic mode of respiration. So, if you have to differentiate these two, the aerobic is also called as oxybiotic, anaerobic respiration is also called as anoxybiotic. Aerobic respiration produces 38 moles of ATP, and anaerobic only produces 2 moles of ATP. The aerobic proceeds in the presence of oxygen, anaerobic without oxygen. Aerobic causes complete breakdown of glucose, whereas in anaerobic, there is incomplete breakdown of glucose because you're having one compound which is still organic and has not removed all its carbon and hydrogen. The end products are carbon dioxide and water, and here the end products are ethyl alcohol and carbon dioxide. 1 mole of glucose liberates 38 ATP molecules. That's a large amount of energy, whereas here it only liberates 2 ATP. That's a very small amount of energy. It occurs throughout life, whereas anaerobic is only used for temporarily for a very short period of time when the plant requires anaerobic mode of respiration because the other mode is not available. So, with this, we finished the first part of respiration in plants. Hope you have understood it all. Thank you very much, and God bless you all.